Major changes coming to TNA, plus a new WWE contract re-signing, and we got to talk about Jake Paul. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss this. Don't forget, I'm giving away this championship belt at 100,000 subscribers, so go ahead and click subscribe today. All right, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the Ango Show. I want to kick things off with Jake Paul. Now, there is a reason why I'm talking about Jake Paul. Trust me, it's not random. We talked a little bit about it in the past that perhaps maybe Matt Riddle could be in the hunt for a fight against Jake Paul. Now, Dave Meltzer and the Wrestling Observer newsletter, have noted that talks are expected to start next week for Jake Paul versus Matt Riddle. And this is really interesting. They say that there were at least talks that were expected to take place this week regarding Jake Paul versus Riddle. At best, the talk right now should be categorized as very preliminary. Ultimately, it's a call that will be made on Paul's side. If it's boxing rules, it's likely an easy, safe fight for Paul, and Riddle would be doing it for a payday, which is pretty much most of Jake Paul's boxing fights. If it's MMA rules, they say it's intriguing because Paul would be younger and has been fighting while Riddle hasn't, and the size isn't an issue like it was with Paul boxing guys like Nate Diaz and Tyron Woodley. But Riddle has kept up with his jiu-jitsu training throughout his WWE career. There are other wrestling companies who have shown interest, but no deal is expected to be closed or could happen until December 20th, obviously due to the non-compete clause. The baggage that led to him being fired by WWE is obviously going to be a factor in any decision making by the companies. Obviously very interesting when considering Matt Riddle fighting Jake Paul. There is this belief that Matt Riddle and Jake Paul will never happen in MMA. It sounds like Jake Paul's camp has already denied that from even happening. They've rejected that. Matt Riddle boxing Jake Paul to me is a quick way to get paid and an easy way to get memed. And I know some people might disagree with that. Matt Riddle was in the UFC. Matt Riddle was in the WWE, but Matt Riddle was never a boxer. Jake Paul, whether you like him or hate him, he obviously clearly has the advantage over Matt Riddle. So Matt Riddle could get KO'd, he can get memed, but he can get paid a shit ton of money. The interesting thing is, like, I know Dave Meltzer talked about this. I know some boxing sources have talked about this, but there's talks that Fury and Ngannou did less than 100,000 pay-per-view buys, which is absolutely insane to think about because that seemed like a massively promoted fight. So, like, the reality is I don't think Matt Riddle and Jake Paul draw at all. I would much rather see Jake Paul fight actual boxers. At the end of the day, it's sports entertainment. I will leave you with that. It's sports entertainment. This would be utilized as former WWE superstar versus Jake Paul. And that's why everything is on Jake's team and their camp to decide who he's going to fight. Because one, they're probably going to try to pick easy fights, obviously. But two, they got to make money off of this. It's a business before it's a sport. People tend to forget that. But if they do fight in boxing, Jake Paul wins, in my humble opinion. Dragon Lee, huge update regarding Dragon Lee and his WWE contract. Dave Meltzer had actually gone on to report that Dragon Lee signed a new deal with the WWE now that he is part of the main roster. He said that Dragon Lee signed his new main roster deal last week. Basically, it made it worth it to have him, signing the NXT deal rather than the offered AEW deal. As noted, he actually went to people who knew the United States wrestling scene who told him he'd be lost in the shuffle in AEW. So that was one of the reasons why Dragon Lee decided to go to WWE. He went to NXT, but now WWE has moved him up to the main roster, and he is going to get paid a lot more. I'm a big Dragon Lee fan, and I feel like Dragon Lee in AEW or WWE, it's a big toss-up, right? Because in AEW, I feel like in a sense, in hindsight, it almost seemed like a better fit. But then when you look at how Dragon Lee's been handled in WWE thus far, yeah, I think it works. I think he's fine in WWE. I like Dragon Lee in WWE. I like what they did with him in NXT. I like the fact that WWE didn't keep him in NXT for 3 to 4 years. I like the fact that Dragon Lee is talented, but he's actually finding himself, and it looks like he's getting comfortable in the WWE. I would love nothing more than for these people to get paid and get some great benefits being where they're at. You know what I mean? And I don't feel like for Dragon Lee, there's ever a wrong decision. Had he gone to TNA, WWE, AEW, anything like that, There's not really a wrong answer there. But in fact, I would go as far as saying Dragon Lee being in WWE has so far been a thumbs up. There's a lot more to do, but you don't need to put the rocket ship on him just yet. Obviously, getting paid more money is a good thing. I want to also see this become a trend for WWE. I think, signing people, bringing them into NXT, get acclimated to the system, and then, hey, once we move you up to the main roster, we'll give you a new contract. I think that could be a really good method and a recruiting method in general, because if you're somebody from MLW or TNA and you're contemplating, hey, should I go to WWE? And maybe you built up your name a little bit. You can go to WWE and say, listen, I'll take a little bit less money, but when the main roster comes, I want to be able to sign a new contract. I think people will say yes to that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So far, so good. Dragon Lee doing pretty damn well in WWE. Can't wait to see what they do with him on the main roster, but please, WWE, do not screw it up. Do not screw it up. It's still a little bit early to say whether it's a success. As of now, they haven't given me a reason to give him a thumbs down, but obviously that could always change, and I can't wait to see what they do. Which, by the way, I will point this out. If Logan Paul wins the U.S. Championship, I want Dragon Lee versus Logan Paul at WrestleMania 40 for the U.S. title. I'm sorry, but I'm sticking with that. That'd be pretty freaking dope, honestly. They would have a pretty freaking awesome match. And that brings us to our final topic, guys. TNA. A lot of things coming to TNA. We've talked about production and stuff like that, but now Scott D'Amore just did an interview with Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated. This guy is hyping it up, and I want to share with you guys what he said. Scott D'Amore vowed that TNA would be the hardest working company in professional wrestling and doing what they do best by taking chances, giving a stage to wrestlers to just do that, and evolving the business. He says, we know we're good at what we do, and we're going to be a game changer and a force in 2024, so you got to stay tuned. You will see some changes to our show. The pacing is going to be quicker. There will be a shakeup talent-wise, and you're going to see us disrupt and change wrestling. We're going to push the limits like we did with Ultimate X and King of the Mountain. That might mean every once in a while we sometimes fall on our face in a reverse battle royal, but hopefully not too often. We owe it to our fans to take chances. There is nothing better than this interview with Justin Barrasso. This guy is willing to admit shortcomings, and he's willing to hype up the product. But something that he said in there was the talent shakeup. And I'm very intrigued by this. And it really gets me thinking about the potential idea of TNA signing release WWE superstars, because they need a front man. They need somebody to help wave the flag for TNA moving forward. When January comes around, it's going to be a pretty massive event in the sense of, this is a new era for the company. They really have one chance to really get people bought in. And, I'm going to kind of throw this out there. Right now, the general consensus by fans is that AEW is losing a little bit of its momentum. Regardless of how you feel about AEW, I think for the health of wrestling, there's nothing wrong with a third company coming up and trying to gain those fans. There's never been a better time for TNA to try this out. They signed Leon Slater, a standout from the UK indie scene. There's rumors of them going after some of these released guys from WWE. And by that time, by the way, their non-compete clauses will be over. TNA has a chance to do something really big here. I'm not saying they're overthrowing the second company, and I'm not saying they're overthrowing the top company. But what I'm saying is I think they're going to make a big splash. And the fact that they're willing to make these major changes to the production, to the stage, the overall presentation, the pacing, they know what they got to do. And I think this also means the resurgence of the X Division. We saw it a little bit this year with Impact Wrestling, but I think we're going to see it even more, obviously, by that signing of Leon Slater. So this is cool. Good for wrestling. I'm excited. Major changes happening. We'll obviously keep you guys updated with everything TNA and WWE and everything else that's happening in wrestling. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button. I'm giving away this championship belt at 100K. Appreciate you for watching. Peace.